All right. This is the KubeBuilder subproject meeting for October 9th, 2019. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, so don't say anything that you don't want recorded for all posterity. All right. So we've got 3 items on the agenda for today, plus if anyone wants to add any, but there's currently 3. So I think we'll jump right into them. So the first is more of kind of a heads up. So the Meta controller project has expressed, the community around there has expressed interest in perhaps getting that transferred to Kubernetes SIGs. So there's some discussion going on there, but I think that seems reasonable to me, and I just wanted to run it by the existing KubeBuilder community because it would probably fall under our subproject if we did end up transferring it over. But I think that makes sense for Meta controller from a maintenance perspective and community perspective, and it kind of makes sense from a KubeBuilder extensibility perspective as well.
Sally, would that mean that Meta controller would be a separate project next to KubeBuilder maintained by the KubeBuilder community, or would it be like a new package or command line tool in the KubeBuilder project itself?
It would be a separate project, at least for now.
Cool.
The potentially, like, hopefully we could eventually, do stuff like get it rebased on controller runtime and stuff like that. But just kind of in the short term, having it in Kubernetes SIGs would, I think, be good for making it easy to maintain and get community involvement. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
All right. I'm going to drop the link to the discussion so far in the meeting notes after the meeting, if anybody's interested in helping out.
Yeah, I think like we're working over on Kudo, which has a lot of the same goals as Meta controller. So I think I'd like to find a way to help unify what we're doing over there with that project as well, since they're so similar.
Okay, that's cool. Awesome. All right. So the second thing I wanted to discuss was introducing more of a formal process for adding maintainers to KubeBuilder, both at the reviewer and the approver level. We've grown a lot, and I know there's a lot of y'all who have been doing some really awesome contributions and doing reviews and stuff. And so I figured it was time that perhaps we discuss a kind of formal, like you can become a reviewer if you do 10 reviews on PRs and then, submit yourself as a reviewer to an owner's file. And then you can become an approver if you've, been a reviewer for some amount of time and, there's lazy consensus amongst the existing approvers that you would make a good addition or something like that, right? Like, I don't know what the exact criteria would be at the moment, but I wanted to get that kind of ball rolling because, it would be, awesome to have that help in kind of a more formal capacity, and B, it would be more fair to have formal criteria like that, I think. Any thoughts, suggestions? I'm going to open an issue in the KubeBuilder repo as well to discuss this kind of offline, but I wanted to bring it up here first.
I can add to that. Hi, I'm Phil Whitrock. Um, there is some guidance, I think, across the community around uh, progression on kind of the ladder for maintainership. It is pretty out of date. I think it was a straw man put into place years ago, but it's there and at least shows the precedence that there should be like kind of a standard way of evaluating. And one reason it's important to have that is because some folks are more comfortable self-promoting and kind of asking for that stuff than other folks. And we want to make sure that we're not only giving progressing people on the kind of maintainership ladder who are self-promoters, but really making sure everyone's on the same ground.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Awesome. I will create an issue again on the KubeBuilder repo, and I will link it, and we can come up with some formal set of criteria, and we can integrate perhaps the straw man or the initial feedback from that. And if you have thoughts, please do come and comment. And if you are interested in being a reviewer too and or approver, obviously, as we figure those out, please do submit yourself. All right, so one more quick note from me, and then I think we have an additional item from Phil. So the last quick note from me is that after much delay on my part, unfortunately, we finally have a YouTube channel for KubeBuilder recordings as part of the, or a YouTube playlist as part of the Kubernetes organization, just like SIG API machinery, etc. So I will share that out. And with any luck, all of our future meetings will go there for people to view afterwards. All right. So, and with that, I think I will turn it over to Phil because he has the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, I've just tagged something on here at the end. And I think this relates to MetaController and KubeBuilder, but and I just came out of the SIG CLI meeting where I actually brought up the same topic. But Kustomize has this notion of plugins where Kustomize will ingest some set of resources and transform them using some configuration, defining the function, and then spit out a new set of resources, right? So you can imagine like put everything in this namespace as a transformer where it takes a bunch of resources, then puts everything in a namespace that's namespaced, and then spits them out. And this is actually pretty similar to the MetaController approach for declarative in, declarative out transformations on resources for controllers. And KubeBuilder, also a controller, could use this pattern as well. And what I'd like to do is, if we are converging on this sort of generalized functional pattern for manipulating resources across regardless environment, whether it's client side or server side, if we had a kind of a standard format for accepting resources and then emitting them, I think it would make our ability to reuse tooling a lot better, and the ability to like move stuff around between, is this a controller or is it a plugin or these sorts of things, right? And you don't have to relearn a platform each time you're doing something a little bit different. So the main thing I'd like to do here is just put together like a format, which is effectively an extension to the V1 list format that also accepts like the custom resource in the case of a controller, or the customized plugin configuration in the case of Kustomize, to start building on that as kind of a standard IO format. So my plan is to put together a cap. It could either go in SIG CLI, under SIG CLI, or under API machinery. I'll probably put it under SIG CLI unless anyone wants it someplace else. Thoughts, comments? Does this resonate with anyone?
Is the idea to use this like in a controller, like a KubeBuilder project would use these APIs to make it easier to deploy deploy dependent resources of a CR? Is that the idea?
Yes, the idea is to yes, the idea is to when we're writing something like MetaController, like the pattern for MetaController, right, is to accept a request of resources, do some transformations, and then kind of return a result. And so the idea is the format of that request is standardized across MetaController or customized plugins or whatever else you're doing. And so then we can build kind of shared tooling that, like you could imagine, like here's your starter project that just fills in the function signature, right? And then kind of wraps it, and then you can put your code in there and it looks familiar wherever you're writing it.
Got it. Okay. I just wanted to, that's an interesting idea. I agree with it. I just wanted to distinguish that from some of the other discussions that we've had with KubeBuilder in terms of having a plugin architecture that supports like different scaffolding techniques. It sounds like this is a separate idea.
Yes, although I am always surprised at how much every single problem seems to actually boil down to this one. I think most of the problems I look at, because it's a declarative interface for Kubernetes, right? Effectively every request is a resource request. And so you can actually represent most of the things you want to do this way. So from a scaffolding perspective, I'd imagine like for scaffolding configuration for running KubeBuilder, this might actually fit with that as well, because it would just be another instance of generating resources. For scaffolding Go code, this would not be a good fit.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next is what about non-resource types? Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Expect that cap in the next 2 weeks. I'll send it out to the KubeBuilder list and 6CLI. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to discuss today?
I guess quickly, I wouldn't mind bringing up the 115 and 116 bumps and what we think the next steps are.
Yeah. So I think we have confirmation. We have loose confirmation that we haven't broken our public interface, right?
For 115, yes.
Okay. So we can get that merged. I can press the go button on that today, and we'll cut a release with that. Can we do something similar on 116?
I see no reason why not.
Okay, cool.
Is anyone on this call the author of the 116 PR or knows about it?
No, but we've been using that one over on Kudo temporarily, and there was an internal API change, but otherwise everything seems to work.
Okay, I'll take a stab at running that same Go API diff tool that I wrote last week, and we'll see what it spits out and make sure there's nothing else glaringly obvious that might be broken. And then I guess we can go from there.
We're talking about controller runtime and not KubeBuilder for this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Joe?
Yeah, I have not tested KubeBuilder generating. I've just only tested controller runtime.
Yeah, Joe, if we can get that more finalized and then added as a script or something that we can really easily run in the controller runtime repo, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. so some of your suggestions that we were talking about last week in terms of like, if we have a type in a function signature in controller runtime that has a breaking change, and that type is in an external repo, there's a little bit of weirdness and it doesn't quite work how we would expect, I think, that thing that I have written a POC for. So what I'd like to do is probably spend a little more time cleaning that up such that it we can be very sure that what it's telling us is right, and we don't have to like analyze the output a whole lot to figure out what changed and what didn't.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if it will be useful at all, but there's a PR hanging around where I attempted from like, I don't know, like 8 months ago or something like that, maybe even a year ago, where I attempted to do something similar to what you did. The state of the code is really, really hacky, but it did have the logic for like traversing through the API and figuring out like what things from external packages were actually part of our public API. Cool. So that you might have some inspiration from that. I can see if I can dig that up, and I'll stick it in the meeting notes or send it to you on Slack or something.
Perfect. Sounds good.
It should just be hanging around as a open or closed PR. Okay.
Awesome. Yep. I appreciate it.
Cool. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this goes anywhere, but in the process of trying to get things working with controller runtime on Kudo, there was challenges, I guess, with a daemon dependency with client Go. So there might be a need to provide some guidance for people using controller runtime as to what versions should be used.
Yeah, at the moment, we generally recommend that people follow the exact versions in the go.mod file. And don't try to change any versions, just because some things like you get a little bit of wiggle room on, and other things like you change them by a version and everything explodes terrifically in a mess of dependency issues. So that's like our general guidance at the moment, at least, is just follow controller runtime exactly. We realize that that's not always the easiest thing to do. We are finally getting progress on having a standalone library from Kubernetes that includes the generic parts of client Go, the generic parts of API machinery. Supposedly, we'll be getting a cap from that from SIG API machinery soonish. This release, hopefully. So if we get that, we will draft up a plan to switch to that, and that will make all of this a lot easier. But in the meantime, yeah, generally try to stick to the versions listed in go.mod.
How would you feel related to that? Like a lot of the Kubernetes dependencies, given some of Go mod's issues with semver and high version numbers, what would be your thoughts about tagging the releases of controller runtime and maybe even controller tools to the Kubernetes version, just to match the paradigm, I guess, the client API and a bunch of these other libraries are using, just so then you know, when you install, you do a go get controller runtime sigs.kto/controller runtime at Kubernetes -1.16.1. I think is how that all is panning out now. What would you think about matching that for this upcoming controller runtime 1.15 and 1.16 releases and in the future?
So I mean, I've henceforth been hesitant to do that, just because it makes it impossible to know if something's going to break when you upgrade your code from the controller runtime perspective, right? Like if you're pinning to Kubernetes versions, right? Like there, you don't have any idea if this is like controller runtime has a breaking change, Kubernetes got upgraded, stuff like that.
Sure.
That has been our hesitation thus far on doing that.
That's fair. The only reason I think it would be nice to have some sort of indication of that is because then you can at least then there's a clear marker of if we're trying to match what's in our go.mod to what's in a specific version of a controller runtime release, we can plan that out a little bit more clearly versus having to go through each point release and keeping that up to date. Because we for example may elect that we want to stay on the Kubernetes 1.14 set of client libraries, and that's not the case. We want to move to 1.16 for the CRD v1, but going forward, I guess my worry is keeping. I get where you're going. This is a hard problem because I don't want to get behind on controller runtime releases, but I don't want to suddenly introduce a breaking client change in the rest of our code base because controller runtime updates. And I guess we'll just have to keep. I guess we'll have to talk internally on our side on how we'll deal with that.
Yeah, it's also a little tough because we're not gonna maintain different versions. Like we're not gonna have different release branches for different Kubernetes versions, because like that ends up with an exploding matrix, right? Like you end up with like, okay, here's release 0.2 for 1.14 and release 0.2 for 1.15 and release 0.2 for 1.16. And so then you get into a case where if you want newer controller runtime features, you'd have to upgrade the Kubernetes tag anyway. And so like beyond being able to just say like, I need this version of the dependencies, so I'm using this tag, which I guess is useful. It doesn't help you with like you actually have like two axes of updates that you want to do problem.
Right. That's fair. Okay.
But it's definitely come up before. That discussion exists in our long running like, how do we handle versions and dependencies, and why is dependency management so hard issue on controller runtime, which we should have hanging around as an issue somewhere, and I can link it. But yeah, that's definitely been brought up before.
That would be great to read if it's reposted.
Yeah, I can remind me to, here we go. Let me just add a note to myself. Link long running. Why is everything so terrible in dependencies issue? All right, I'll add that to the meeting notes after the meeting because I can't type and talk at the same time. So anything else anyone wants to talk about?
I like the issue that I created, Solly. I'm not sure if that's the one you're talking about, but that's one of them.
Yeah, I think that maybe. I think we've had a couple others that I can try to link. I think that's the most recent one I was thinking of. But I think there's others that have occurred over time. I'll see if I can find them. Yeah, this is not the first time this question has been brought up. All right. So if no one else has anything to discuss, thanks to everyone for coming. Oh, before we go, let me look at my calendar. What day is a month from now would be October I'm assuming when is our next meeting is my question.
I think it's
November
probably-
13th.
Yeah.
So that's right before KubeCon, right? But it's sufficiently far away from KubeCon that I don't think we're going to be overlapping, so we can still have the meeting. Cool. All right. See y'all in a month then.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.